answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
A U.S. official says the one-way drone used in the attack was Iranian-made, the same kind Iran has provided to Russia to aid in its invasion of Ukraine and to the militias it supports.
Iran continues to arm and equip these groups to launch these attacks.
Pentagon officials tell CBS News the explosive drone came in low and slow several minutes after a U.S. drone was returning from a mission in Syria. The base's air defense system had been temporarily taken offline to allow the American drone to land safely. There was little to no warning for the troops still in their sleeping quarters.
That is a shocking report as filed by CBS, and the information inside of it that the warning system that would have detected the drone coming in low and slow headed to our troops at Tower 22, that outpost, the radar was turned off. They turned it off, apparently, to make sure that they did not try to shoot down their own drone as it returned. Now, I do not know specifics of exactly how and what they're doing out there, but there is a way to identify craft that is not enemy, it is yours. I do not know what the hell they were doing otherwise in this case. I'm not going to claim I have any expertise on it, but their identification ways that are constantly in place. They identify all the planes flying in the sky at any point. They have to have a signal that they transmit to be identified. Who they are, where they're going, that kind of stuff. If they have a flight plan. If they don't have a flight plan, they may or may not have a signal they're emitting. But in this case, if you're in an area where you're possibly facing a threat, an attack upon your troops from a foreign national, and you're in a hostile territory anyway, I mean, they're in Jordan. That's one of our more peaceful neighbors in the Middle East, but surrounded by the hostiles, turning off your protection to allow one of your own drones to return, I have to admit I'm totally lost on this one. I'll try to get more answers for you as we move through this program, but there's a lot of questions about that. Now, President Biden did come out and make some additional remarks today about what he's going to do. There was another press gathering, mobbing as he's waiting for the Chopper 1 to take him somewhere, wherever he was going at that point. And there's a lot of noise and the cameras flashing. Bottom line is, again, nothing of substance said other than, we'll be responding. And I'm not looking for the president or anyone in our military to be telling the enemy and telegraphing what our plan is. I've got an interesting story I'll relate to that a little bit later it goes back to the original Iraqi war, the original Gulf War, I should say it. But let me save it for a little bit later because I want to deal with some more pressing things. First of all, let me set the stage for you. Glad to have you on board again with us, January 30, 2024. January 30, wow. This year is almost a 12th gone. This is the first hour of Larry Connors USA, first to 2 hours back-to-back, right here for you, Monday through Friday, from 6 to 8 p.m. And remember, if you miss anything, you can also go to LarryConnersUSA.com or Larry Connors USA Facebook and pull it up. When we're on the air, we are streaming video at Larry Connors USA Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, also News Talk STL, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter, and on YouTube for News Talk STL. And more of you are watching at your appointed times that work for you, that's fine. When you do, please share with others that you think need to be included. Thank you. Now, the official response, as I said, President Biden would be the official response, but he didn't really add much, and neither did his official spokesman. But let's go down the list. We'll begin with Secretary of State Blinken, followed by John Kirby of the NSC coordinating for the White House?
We will respond, and that response could be multi-leveled, come in stages, and be sustained over time.
President Biden huddled with top advisors Monday while it's still unclear whether the U.S. will directly target Iran.
We are not looking for a war with Iran. We are not seeking a conflict with the regime in a military way.
On Capitol Hill, some Republicans say the militias responsible should be hit with force.
These are the tentacles of Iran, and we need to hit the tentacles hard to send a message to Iran that the United States will not tolerate attacks on our troops.
While some Democrats are urging caution.
We are increasingly getting pulled into a wider and wider war in the Middle East, and I think we have to be extremely careful about what our next steps are.
It is obviously true that we need to be extremely careful, and we do not want to widen the war, but you cannot let them stew in our fear, because they will then boil over again. And the more this White House says, we don't want to rage and enlarge the war, are they talking to the enemy? Or are they talking to the American people? The American people do not want a wild conflict in the Middle East. That I think should all agree on. We don't want mini nukes or anything else like that used, even short of that, in the Middle East. God grant us peace throughout the world, but that's not going to happen at this point. But the enemy, every time you say, well, we don't want to engage in more, we don't want a wider range, to me, you're almost saying, okay, we took that on the chin, and we lost 3 service members. Woe is us. But we don't want to make it a bigger fight. I take direct and immediate condemnation of such an attitude. And also agree with what has been stated, that when we do respond, don't talk to me about proportional. You make it heavy. You make it heavy-handed. Boot stomping on the back of their neck is necessary to whatever the target you go after. And you do not telegraph in advance we're going to do it so they can clear their personnel and weapons out of the area, as we did before we hit some of the targets in Yemen. Yeah, we let the Houthi rebels know we're going to be hitting this target. Well, it gives them time to clear everything out, including their weapons and people. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, and his view.
There has to be devastating military retaliation for the targeting of American troops in Jordan, a friendly nation, across international borders, leaving 3 dead Americans and more than 36 wounded. And some of those, Bill, are in grave, critical condition as well. This is not an anomaly for Iran. This is what they've been doing for 45 years, but they have amped it up under Joe Biden and before him, Barack Obama, because the Obama-Biden foreign policy has been one of appeasement and conciliation. We have to totally reverse that policy, starting with retaliatory strikes right now and continuing beyond that to ensure that we're no longer trying to bribe the Ayatollahs with billions of dollars. We're not looking the other way whenever they cheat on sanctions, and we're certainly not going to tolerate even the slightest provocation against our troops in the Middle East. Anything else will simply invite more attacks.
That is correct. If you're just going to kind of slap at them or do nothing or give them advance warning, they're going to respond with more attacks and more force. I want you to listen to an ABC host questioning Senator Cotton and actually quoting a critic about the possibility and the luxury, let me put it that way, the luxury of being a U.S. senator and to make a statement like he did without any connections to any consequences. Here's the ABC reporter raising the question to Senator Cotton.
Calling for irresponsible actions without bearing responsibility for the outcome is a senatorial perk. What would you say is actually irresponsible in this situation?
What's irresponsible is 11 years of the Obama-Biden foreign policy towards Iran of trying to appease, coddle, and conciliate Ayatollahs who still chant to this day, death to America and death to Israel. That's why we have all these attacks on Americans. Bill, you laid out the more than 160 attacks since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, but it didn't start because of that October 7th atrocity. There were more than 100 attacks against Americans since Joe Biden took office before October 7th. How many times did we retaliate? Something like 4 or 5. Almost every case against empty buildings or warehouses in the middle of nowhere. Again, that simply emboldened Iran and its proxies throughout the Middle East to continue these attacks. That's the height of irresponsibility, a cowardly, sniveling policy that led our troops as sitting ducks in a region because the commander-in-chief would not take action to protect them.
Thank you, Senator Cotton, for putting it that boldly. And thank you to the men and women that are serving in our services, wherever you are. Maybe you're not in the Middle East at this point, but you might well be before it's over. And thanks to the parents and relatives you have. Our troops are at the tip of the spear at this point, yet we're not really ready, apparently, to use it. Now, here's the other issue. One thing Biden could do immediately, and I don't know why they continue to dally around and play whatever game they're doing in the back room of crayons, immediately reimpose sanctions against Iran. Start there. And we won't even do that. The Biden administration, of course, also continues to fight Texas for protecting its own border from illegals invading that state. And later in this hour, Heritage constitutional expert Hans von Spakovsky will join us on that legal battle. Plus, the Texas governor is now going after any city or county in Texas that wants to declare itself a sanctuary.
The first and foremost goal of government is to keep our people safe. What this sheriff has done is to release back out on the streets people who endanger our fellow Texans. As governor, I will not allow that to happen. Stuart, already I have defunded the Travis County government to the tune of $1.5 million in grant money from the governor's office. But now Texas is working on legislation that has already passed out of the Senate, I think will pass out of the House, and in just a few weeks I will sign legislation that will impose stiff penalties on counties as well as on county officials like this sheriff, including the potential for jail time, including fines, including the possibility that these counties can be sued for civil damages for their dereliction of duty.
Yeah, suing them. That's pretty strong. Now, of course, there's going to be a battle back and forth, but Austin, Texas, my birthplace, which I regret to say has gone blue, is one of those stepping up and acting like a sanctuary city. Governor Abbott is convinced that the penalties we're going to impose upon the cities and the counties by withholding funds is going to be punishing, and it will work.
The financial penalties will be so stiff, there's no way the counties could bear the burden of that cost. But secondly, because of the potential for jail time for the sheriff, ironically, going to the very jail that she is releasing people from, because of that, we will have the removal of the sheriff who is in noncompliance with ICE detainer requests.
And when will all of these measures be in place?
This should be a few weeks from now. Our legislative session ends at the end of May. I should be signing that law before the end of May. The effective date of this will be September 1. That's just the way the legislative calendar works. But this law will go into effect September 1 that will banish sanctuary cities. However, Stuart, in the meantime, I as governor and law enforcement officers in the state of Texas will be doing everything we can to make sure these dangerous criminals are not released back out onto the streets.
And that is important because that's what they're doing in sanctuary cities and states, not just in Texas, but elsewhere, where they pick them up. They will not hold them for detention until ICE can get there. They just simply let them go. And he says you're not going to do that in this state again without facing severe penalties from the state. And, of course, today we now are moving forward at this point with the House to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas.
House Republicans on Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. GOP leader saying, quote, his refusal to obey the law is not only an offense against the separation of powers in the Constitution of the U.S., it also threatens our national security. Texas Congressman Pat Fallon filed the original articles of impeachment against Mayorkas a year ago and joins us now as the GOP closes in on making it happen. So, Congressman, for people who say he just is terrible at his job, but it's not impeachable, what do you say?
Well, I say that when you lie under oath to Congress, Brian, that is impeachable, and that's what Alejandro Mayorkas has done. And not only that, but he's violated the Immigration and Nationality Act 7-8 times over. And these articles spell that out in specificity.
Yeah, now that raises a different issue than what we were discussing yesterday when Jonathan Turley, also a Fox News contributor, a George Washington Law School professor, said you can't really impeach Mayorkas simply because he does a bad job. But the articles of impeachment laying out instances of perjury and where he has said things that obviously are untrue, then you've got an issue possibly for high crimes and misdemeanors, at least as we'll go through the House. The problem is it's still a razor-thin margin. As you were listening then to the response to the Republican who had introduced the measure and finally getting around to it, trying to get the House to get on board with it, Texas Congressman Pat Fallon, he said, we're not getting at this point everything we need in support from our own party. Some of them are a little weak-kneed again. We'll be discussing if Mayorkas can be impeached coming up in the next segment with our Heritage constitutional expert. And before this hour is out, MSNBC Rachel Maddow warns of Trump dictatorship. But before I do that, one other thing I want to add. The squad member Cori Bush is now under the DOJ investigation. That's right. The member of the far-left squad in Congress reportedly under investigation for allegedly misusing government funds meant for private security. 6 different sources are being cited from the DOJ. Yesterday, the Justice Department subpoenaed the House Sergeant-at-Arms for records related to the misuse of federal security money. The House clerk read a message from the Office of the Sergeant of Arms formally notifying the House chamber that the office had been served with a grand jury. And according to the official House website, the Sergeant-at-Arms is the chief law enforcement and protocol officer of the House of Representatives, responsible for maintaining order, blah, 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 and it continues on that way. Now, the reports did not name which House Democrat was involved in the investigation officially, but one House Democrat previously investigated had been Cori Bush. She continues to pay now her husband for private security after their marriage. And then don't forget about Fannie Willis down in Georgia. Fannie, Bonnie, Funny. She's also facing criminal investigation. Coming up, Hans von Spakovsky on can we impeach Mayorkas and what do we do about the Texas border barrier battle? A lot to cover. You don't want to go anywhere. Lock and load. Ready. On the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Pigeons, they are everywhere, and they're very good at dive bombing freshly washed cars. Wellington Environmental reminds you those droppings are more than a nuisance. They can be a major health issue, especially massive droppings on buildings or in parking garages. So who do you call to safely clean it up? You do what many hospitals, universities, public buildings already do. You call Wellington Environmental. Wellington Environmental has been dealing with all kinds of hazards for 35 years. Special people, special skills, special equipment. Wellington gets it done. So to avoid health issues ranging from pigeon droppings to mold to chemical leaks, contact Wellington. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental, your world cleaner, better, safer. Be well with Wellington.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Horace, Americans individually have lost over $4,000 in income and over $7,000 where you have a household with both parents working.
It shouldn't be, it's the economy stupid. We should just say, stupid! It's the economy. Unbelievable the devastation that Americans are feeling.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
What if everything you thought and believed to be true about owning and buying your home turned out to be wrong?
Straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home.
We're the only country that has one of those. Most other countries, considering like Canada, the UK, they don't have long-term fixed-rate mortgages like that. They're all variable-rate mortgages.
HomeWise with Michael Midgett, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL.
Great news for my sponsor, Napoli Sea. And it's no surprise to me, nor hundreds who have dined there. The first time I entered, it was clear Napoli Sea is unique. The decor, the fish, imaginative cocktails, and of course, Napoli Sea is right next door to Napoli 3 in St. Charles. Napoli 2 is in Town and Country. The original Cafe Napoli is in Clayton, and I'm honored to endorse each of them. Visit any of the Cafe Napolis.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My guest is Hans von Spakovsky. He's a heritage constitutional expert. And Hans, always glad to have you on board, sir.
Well, thanks for having me back.
I know you're on a tight schedule. I don't want to abuse it, so let's jump right to it. First of all, let's deal with the border battle. I'm looking at some statements from the Heritage Foundation and maybe you as well. I don't know who actually signed off on it, that the decision by the Supreme Court is not preventing the state of Texas from protecting its border. Am I wrong or right?
No, you're correct about that. As you know, what Texas has been doing is putting down barbed wire fencing, but they've been sticking to state-owned property and private property where the owners have given them permission to do that. And no court has told Texas that it has to take that down. The only thing that happened was that an injunction had been issued telling the Biden administration that it couldn't take down any parts of this fencing, and the Supreme Court issued a 2-line order saying, no, the injunction is dissolved while this case is on appeal. So it wasn't a decision on the merits.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd been saying that the other day, that a lot of ranch land abuts to other ranch land. I don't know how much of it abuts directly, and I don't know. Well, first of all, do you know if the Rio Grande border and the actual, let's say, an eminent domain exists between it and any private-owned land or even state land?
I think there's a lot of private land along the border, and the smartest thing.
I know it's along the border, but does it include access to the river? I mean, that they have the Rio Grande part of it.
Yeah, no, I think so, and that's why it's really smart for Texas to be doing what it is doing.
That was my thought. I thought if there is an eminent domain stretch there that neither belongs to the state nor the landowners, then you just pull the barbed wire back, razor wire, and put it on the farmers' and ranchers' land. They already have fences up anyway. I mean, they keep out coyotes, and by that I mean the 4-legged type, but this will also keep out the coyotes who bring over the illegals.
Right. No, that's exactly right. So at the moment, like I said, Texas, there's no court order preventing Texas from doing what's doing. And as you have seen within the last couple of days, the Biden administration actually backed down and said it was no longer going to try to take down any of the barbed wire fencing.
I did see that, but to me it signals that they're going to try a runaround. Your thought?
Well, they may, although I think that they have been shocked at how popular opinion is very much against them. And I think, we've entered an election year, and given how badly the president is doing in the polls, I think maybe they've decided to back off, like I said, on this confrontation with Governor Abbott.
So how can Texas continue to do whatever it wants to then? I mean, they already are calling in their National Guard if they want it. Other governors are offering their National Guard. In other words, the essence of the issue, if the federal government is not going to protect you and your state from a foreign invasion, then you should be entitled to do so. Is that up in the air at all?
Well, that is the position Texas is taking. And remember, what the Supreme Court said was, well, there's no injunction while this case is on appeal, and that's where the situation is. This case right now, the dispute between Texas and the feds is on appeal. The Fifth Circuit, which is the Court of Appeals that covers Texas, is going to have oral arguments on these issues in mid-February. So we should hear more then.
But at this point, you're saying their effort to do this is, quote, unconstitutional, and Texas will win by a KO.
No, I can't say that. All I can say is that right now, no court has said that what Texas is doing is somehow illegal or improper. So for the moment, they can keep fencing the border and trying to help stem the tide of illegal aliens coming across.
The other point being raised by the Biden administration, you're interfering with the federal government authority on immigration.
Well, they can try to make that argument, but that's a tough argument for them to make because, in fact, the district court that originally heard this case said that there was an utter failure by the federal government to basically enforce immigration law and halt the unlawful entry into the U.S. So the only people that are hindering enforcement of federal immigration law is the Biden administration. It's certainly not the state of Texas.
All right, well, in our closing couple of minutes, because, again, I know you're on a tight schedule, and I thank you for making time for us. The House moving forward with the impeachment. Now, yesterday we heard Jonathan Turley, George Washington law professor, as you well know, state that you really can't impeach Mayorkas simply because he does a bad job or you don't like him. I tend to agree with that, and certainly as much as I want Mayorkas out there, your take on that and this issue of if they can get him on perjury issue would be the next offer.
Well, I normally have a lot of respect for Jonathan Turley, but on this issue, he's wrong. They're not impeaching him for making bad decisions. The impeachment articles are for his deliberate violation of federal immigration law. That's an entirely different matter. And if you look at the articles of impeachment, there's two of them. They go through and they very specifically list he's not just not complying with the law, he is directing the Department of Homeland Security to directly violate federal law. I mean, one of the easiest examples is when an illegal alien comes into the country, federal law says he has to be detained or removed immediately. And instead, the administration is allowing them to come in, helping them come in, and then granting them mass parole. That is a direct violation of federal immigration law. And that's why they want to impeach him, is for that.
Well, to his credit, Turley might have been having to make that statement, not actually seeing the true articles that have now been filed. But aside from that, Biden is still doing his boss's orders.
Well, yeah, and look, there's been some discussion about, well, if you're gonna impeach Mayorkas, then Biden also deserves impeachment because he's the one that's
on immigration. On immigration.
Right, on immigration. But I think you start with the federal official who is in charge of the Department of Homeland Security and therefore has immediate control over border security. And by the way, the second article is what you were just talking about, which is lying to Congress under oath on multiple occasions in hearings. That is also clearly an impeachable offense.
Well, is some of that subjective when he says, border's under control? Our numbers are, not that bad. I mean, are we talking about, my perspective is, this is sunny and fun. You're thinking stormy weather.
Well, yeah, when he says it's secure, that's obviously misleading Congress and the public, because in the last 3 years, we've had more illegal aliens cross the border than we have ever had in our entire history. And that is because of deliberate and intentional actions by the administration.
Mayorkas has even admitted that part of the issue is the pull factor. Well, the pull factor exists because they know if they get here, they'll be allowed to get in, and they'll actively give them waivers to go on in and then set up an appeal 8-10 years down the road.
That's if they even if they process them.
Right, even if they do.
And there's evidence that, in fact, they're just letting people in and letting them go without even doing that.
All right, Hans, I know you're up against the wall there, and I thank you again for your time. Your expertise always valued. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We'll do it again. Hans von Spakovsky, Heritage Constitutional Law expert. I'm again, not trying to pit him against Jonathan Turley. It's possible Turley is making his remarks, which would be true. You can't just impeach him because he's bad. He's bad at his job. But if it's violating federal law, then, yeah, it is an impeachable offense. And I don't know how much Turley had seen at that point of the actual impeachment articles. And talking about how some of them are coming through and some of the folks that are being allowed inside, as we were discussing previously with the decision in Texas, we're getting so many in right now that are being absolutely unvetted. We know nothing about them. There's another report of the vast amount of military-age young men coming through and from different countries. Does not look good. We'll continue to follow that. Now, a couple other developments for you. The Illinois Election Board announcing that it is going to keep Donald Trump on the state's primary ballot. Oh, that's pissed off a lot of people in Illinois, I can guarantee you that. The confirmation coming a week before the U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments on whether Trump's alleged role in the January 6th attack disqualifies him from the presidency. The Illinois primary ballot is March 19, so they've been trying to keep him off raising these federal constitutional questions, as they've been doing in other states. But according to the Associated Press, the 8-member board unanimous ruling comes after its hearing officer, a retired judge and Republican, found a, quote, preponderance of evidence shows Trump is ineligible to run for president because he violated a constitutional ban. But the hearing officer recommended the board let the courts make the ultimate decision. So it may still be in play, but I don't know if they're going to get it resolved by March 19. Now, the other issue coming up with this next election is still the question of who will be second on the ticket. Trump is yet to announce, but then, of course, we have to look at the Biden side of the ballot and second on the ticket. There is growing concern and also anticipation, excitement, maybe even fear as to who will be vice president and why this election, the vice president position, might be more important than ever. That's still to come.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at LarryConnersUSA.
I got an email which brought a smile. A woman named Mary wrote me, "We are purchasing a new roof from John Beal based on your recommendation." I thanked her then. I do it again now. "Mary, I only endorse clients I believe in, and I've been a spokesman for John Beal for 10 years. It's all about trust. So if, like Mary, you need John Beal, trust me. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF, 1-800-NEW-ROOF.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, please visit usdeputy.org.
I like supporting local companies that give back to the community. For more than 40 years, Vincent's Jewelers has helped raise more than $1.5 million for local charities. So I'm personally asking that when you're shopping for jewelry, give Vincent's a chance. And in turn, Vincent's will give even more to our community. On Olive, just east of 270. New specials every day on vincentsjewelers.com or Vincent's Facebook.
News, analysis, opinion.
USA, USA! That's a big game, man!
President Xi's really losing control.
People in China didn't ask me about people mowing each other down in a mall.
This is News Talk STL.
It is their responsibility.
He is a metastasizing agent.
We're all keeping a close eye on this.
Illegal immigration is crazy right now.
This United States is not being overrun.
News Talk STL.
It is a crisis at the border without question.
And newstalkstl.com.
Planning a move? I encourage you to call McGuire Moving. And they not only do moving, they can provide you portable storage. They'll bring a storage container to you. You fill it at your time and convenience. They'll pick it up, move it where you want it. Here's their phone number, 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Website, McGuireMoving.com. McGuireMoving.com. Locally owned.
This is News Talk STL.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. And I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels, oh, number 7. Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven. And
this is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Joe Concha says, and I'm quoting now, the vice presidential picks matter more than ever before in this year's election. Concha is with me now. Joe, why is the Veep pick so important this year?
Well, this year, Stu, we have a situation where the consequential pick for Donald Trump is the fact that in 4 years, people see that person being the president, right? If Donald Trump wins and is successful, usually it's then, well, maybe we'll get that vice president in 8 years. So in this case, this is the person that will take the mantle from Donald Trump in an election year that will start basically in 2026. On the Democratic side, it's consequential in a different way, because you have a situation where 32% of Americans, this is according to a Washington Post poll, believe that Kamala Harris is ready to be president. I mean, that's a devastating number when considering most Americans, including a majority of Democrats, don't want Joe Biden running for a second term and being in the Oval Office until he's 86 years old. And perhaps, Stu, this is the reason why we keep hearing this theory that Michelle Obama will replace Joe Biden on the ticket at the convention in Chicago. I don't see that happening, but the chatter is only getting louder around that. So vice presidential picks usually don't decide elections, but they're going to have more of an impact this time around than most other elections.
Those are the words of Fox News correspondent and also contributor to The Messenger, Joe Concha. And again, the point being, if Kamala's on the ticket with Biden, she's not really that liked at all. And if Biden gets in, she will then, if she's serving as VP under him, then she will automatically become president. They don't like that idea. And then on the Republican side, Trump can only serve 4 years. And then he's going to term out since he served the previous 4 years. So it's very important as to who he selects, that person will be more than likely the Republican leader for the nomination next time around. We'll get into that in more detail in the next hour, including how ABC's Jonathan Karl was giving cover to Gavin Newsom of California regarding anything to do with Trump, his association, and what Biden is doing for the country are not doing. And I mean, he gives him cover, big time cover. We'll break that down for you in the next hour. I'd mentioned previously about every time we hear our officials state, well, we're going to take action against Iran. We're going to go after those who killed our soldiers. We're going to do something, but we don't want to make it too big of a war and make it bigger. And again, I asked, is that message intended for the American people, or is it intended for the enemy? Well, the enemy's going to suck it up anyway. In fact, I'm looking at a report from CNBC, and their NBC News military analyst, Colonel Jacobs, retired, said Iran is probably going to continue to encourage its allies to attack in the way they are because they see we are reluctant to hit Iran directly. Just that perception lights the fuse for Iran to continue. I'm sure they didn't like hearing that on one of their own state-controlled media outlets, but the colonel's speaking on a military strategy level. If you keep saying, well, we don't want to get things out of control. In other words, we'll stay on the track we're on. Go ahead and hit us again. I'd mentioned also previously that during the first Gulf War, the absurdity that would come out sometimes, you remember every afternoon when that first Gulf War was underway, they would have a news conference out of Riyadh. I was on TV at that time, but every afternoon before I went into work, I'd stay at the house long enough to watch that news conference. Normally happened around 1 Central. And they were always asking, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do? Sir, are we going to do this or are we going to do that? And they said, we're not going to give you details. We'll just say we are taking action. And they were taking action. And so any other questions? Because we're not going to get in that. Well, sir, are we maybe going to strike at midnight tonight? We're not going to give details of anything. Next question. Sir, are we maybe going to fly out at 3 a.m. and strike? You idiot reporters. They're not going to give it to you, nor should they. And they just kept hounding and pushing on an issue which, one, is vital to national security and our forces in the region. God help us, the lack of journalism that existed then has just gotten worse. Now, I want to turn my attention to how the leftist state-controlled media, as I call them, MSNBC in this case, uses just bits and phrases, often out of context, no surprise there, to promote that if Trump is elected, he will be a dictator.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
You want to give someone something which they will really enjoy? Give them a Cafe Napoli gift card. You pick the amount, and they pick which of the Cafe Napolis they want to visit. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Cafe Napoli in Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, or right next door, Napoli C. The Napoli gift card. It's the perfect gift for anyone, or your entire office. Cafe Napoli. Cafe Napoli.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Yeah. Except
Look,
what?
He's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I said I want to be a dictator for one day. Sean, I only want to be a dictator for one day.
Would you rather have 4 years of Donald Trump as a dictator or 4 years of Joe Biden as a president?
Trump.
As a dictator?
Maybe.
Sometimes in life, we all need a good paddling from the principal to set our life on the right track. And this country does need a little bit of that. We need a little paddling.
It's nice to have a strong man running your country.
Would you rather have 4 years of Donald Trump as a dictator or 4 years of Joe Biden as a president?
Donald Trump all the way.
Even as a dictator?
Yes, yes.
Trump as a dictator.
I think I'm choosing Donald Trump as a dictator.
Yeah, I'm going dictator Trump for sure.
I'd rather have Donald Trump as a dictator.
The other day, Donald Trump said on his first day he's going to be a dictator for a day.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Would you rather have Donald Trump as a dictator for 4 years or re-elect Joe Biden for 4 years?
I would rather have Donald Trump. I'd like them to see repeal the Roosevelt law so that he can be a president for a lot more than 4 years.
But this country needs a dictator. I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
And I'm telling you, the leftist media is eating that kind of stuff up, where they hear those who are supporting Trump saying, yeah, we could use a dictator from time to time, kind of like a schoolmarm or your parents. You will be punished for what you just did. What they have done is take that interview that he was doing with Sean Hannity's, and he said, Sean is asking, he said, you'd like to be a dictator? He said, I would. I'd like to be for one day. You know what he means by that? He has stated it over and over again, and they cut away from when he had a chance to explain what he meant. They cut it away when they were putting that little clip of pieces together because they want to prove that he wants to control you. Now, he said, day one, I will go in and rip up all of the pieces of legislation, executive orders signed by Biden, such as we'll get the Keystone Pipeline back, we'll start doing this, we'll start that, we'll shut the border, obviously, things of that nature. For one day. That's not really being a dictator. That's using the privilege of the office, as Joe Biden did when he went in. He began to sign executive orders left and right, killing the Keystone Pipeline, opening up the border, and everything else. But, of course, if it's our guy Biden doing it, that's not really being a dictator. That's just being Papa, Uncle Joe, doing what he does best for us. Rachel Maddow wanted to take that point and talk about the appealing possibility of a dictator, but when you listen to her, I'm wondering, is she talking about Trump or Biden?
What is appealing about a dictator? What is a dictatorship, right? What is appealing about a strongman leader replacing democracy? Having somebody who just stays in power indefinitely and has unchecked total authority to do whatever he wants. What is appealing about that? Not just why would you offer to be that? You can see the appeal to a person who wants to be that kind of person. But why would you want that in your country? The most appealing thing about a strongman leader, right, is that he'd be able to get stuff done. He'd be unconstrained. Couldn't be stopped, you know? I alone can fix it. Through enforcing, loyalty to him or death, by locking up his enemies, by breaking all the rules, government schmoverment, Congress schmungress. The courts, yeah, right. Them and what army? That's what he is promising. That's the appeal.
Well, now, right there, in those closing words she said, again, if you replay the Biden years and the January 6th inquiry and how everything's been going and labeling Catholics as possible terrorists and now wanting banks to submit records on anyone who bought maybe guns or Bibles and other actions they've taken, and sending SWAT teams into the home of a man who said, I will surrender peacefully. I think it's wrong that you're charging me, but they show it in the middle of the night. And then, of course, going after Donald Trump repeatedly, SWAT teams into Mar-a-Lago as if they're going to raid and break down a cartel bastion. I want to hear Rachel Maddow go over those points again, and my question stands. Is she talking about Trump or Biden in the last 3 years?
He'd be unconstrained. Couldn't be stopped, I alone can fix it. Through enforcing, loyalty to him or death, by locking up his enemies, by breaking all the rules, government schmoverment, Congress schmungress. The courts, yeah, right. Them and what army? That's what he is promising. That's the appeal.
Yeah, that sounds to me like Biden. Does it you? A lot of it does. Larry, you're just drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah, I know. I'm going to hear that from you. But you remember, I don't drink Trump Kool-Aid untested. I test and question everything. E. Jean Carroll is the woman, of course, who won the $83 million in a civil suit against Trump based on defamation, based on her claim of a rape decades ago. We'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment, but I'm leading up to that because Rachel Maddow, after going all through this about a dictator and what kind of person we need leading our nation, suddenly praises E. Jean Carroll as a victor against a would-be dictator such as Donald Trump.
A would-be strongman says he is immune from the legal system. He is unconstrained by any institution and by anything in our government. E. Jean Carroll is the one who called that question. E. Jean Carroll's civil case says, I'm not a strong man, and neither are you. None of us are. No one can be in America because this is a democracy, and the law, in a case like this, she says, the law protects me, even from you. And so I will call the question. I will call on the law, the court system, to show that, to prove that the strong man model does not work here, however much people might want it. This is not Europe between the wars. This is America.
Oh, my God, the way Rachel Maddow said, this is America, I'm almost one stand up and salute. She acts like she really cares about America. Now, the E. Jean Carroll story, again, keep in mind, this is an accusation she filed in a civil suit in 2022, accusing Trump of sexually assaulting her in a dressing room at a Manhattan department store in the mid-'90s. And then because he defamed her, denying that he attacked her in 2019, she filed the suit on defamation. Now, take note of this. In 2022, New York passed a law giving adult sexual assault victims a one-time opportunity to file civil cases, even if the statute of limitations is long expired. So she filed that lawsuit accusing Trump of rape and seeking damages. Just happened to be a little niche cut into the law, and I'm not so sure it wasn't put there precisely, specifically for her. But I'll answer this for you. Trump is not above the law. Neither is Joe Biden. What about the allegations of Tara Reade? Now, keep in mind, the allegations by E. Jean Carroll, there's no video in the department store of Trump following her around, as she claimed. There's no video of him pushing her against a wall near a dressing room, or maybe in the dressing room. Probably wouldn't be a camera there, pushing his hand into her, or maybe her penis. But the bottom line is, no witnesses whatsoever. That's not uncommon with a rape case. I can't stress that enough. You don't simply dismiss the woman's accusations because it's someone powerful she's accusing, and it's just a one-on-one encounter. DNA evidence obviously would be valuable. None existed, none was pulled. But when you're talking about not being above the law, let me remind you about Tara Reade. Tara Reade had stated that Joe Biden, as a senator, pinned her against a wall, kissing her. She said, it all happened at once. His hands were on me, under my clothes, down my skirt, then inside of it. He penetrated me with his fingers and whatever, and kept kissing me. Joe Biden was never held accountable about that, never questioned about it. Nothing done. Nothing. You know, when the facts bite you in the arse, it hurts, doesn't it? As well it should, when you try to deny them. We're going to have more on the E. Jean Carroll story coming up in the next hour, on how she plans to spend the $80 million. That's assuming she doesn't lose it on appeals. And yes, that's going to be part of the story. More actions again also on how the state media tries to control the conversation and make Joe Biden look great despite all the numbers saying otherwise, and how an ABC, quote, journalist covers for Governor Newsom and agrees with him that, yeah, things couldn't be better, could they? Second hour, don't miss it. And as always, I encourage you to remember our pledge. Our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
News, analysis, opinion.
USA, USA. That's a big game, man.
president, she is really losing control.
People in China didn't ask me about people mowing each other down in a mall.
This is News Talk STL.
It is their responsibility.
Hate is a metastasizing agent.
We're all keeping a close eye on this.
Illegal immigration is crazy right now.
This United States is not being overrun.
News Talk STL.
It is a crisis at the border without question.
And newstalkstl.com. Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis.
Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
You guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for us covering the local angle.
People, this is America.
We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1 and newstalkstl.com.
Are you thinking about buying medicine online? A search for online pharmacies yields more than 20 million results. But which ones can you trust? Medicines bought from unlicensed online pharmacies can be dangerous. You may get a fake drug, your condition may get worse, or you may experience a bad reaction. Don't put your health at risk. To learn how to find an online pharmacy that's safe and legal, visit fda.gov/BeSafeRx. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Tony Colombo here, reminding you to join us for the Bluff City Outdoors radio show and podcast, where we talk fishing, hunting, camping, and everything else involving the great outdoors. Brought to you by Bluff City Outdoors in Alton. The Bluff City Outdoors Show, Saturdays at 11 a.m. right here on News Talk STL.
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
Hey, it's Katie, reminding you to subscribe to our show podcast so you never miss anything that happens here at News Talk STL. Get our podcasts every day on the show pages at newstalkstl.com, or just subscribe to your favorite shows on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere else you get your podcasts.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
So many ways to listen to News Talk STL.
Come join the conversation. All you have to do is say,
Hey Alexa, play News Talk STL.
Welcome to News Talk STL, conservative talk radio for St. Louis.
What if everything you thought and believed to be true about owning and buying your home turned out to be wrong?
Straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home.
We're the only country that has one of those. Most other countries, considering like Canada, the UK, they don't have long-term fixed-rate mortgages like that. They're all variable rate mortgages.
HomeWise with Michael Midget, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL. If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
The far left wants to destroy conservative values in America.
This is News Talk STL. Welcome home.
Hey, it's Nick Schroer. To preserve this nation, to preserve the experiment in liberty that our founders envisioned, we must take a stand and fight. Join me Sunday nights at 8 p.m. only on News Talk STL.
Stand and fight with Nick Schroer. Brought to you by Missouri Wild Alchemy at MissouriWild.com.
Ackerman Toyota had a great 2023, so Jay asked me to thank you for all of your support. Loyal customers making Ackerman Toyota number one in St. Louis Toyota sales. Number one out of the 75 Toyota dealers in the region in Camry and Corolla sales. Ackerman has the lowest prices, great selection. Visit Ackerman at Hampton and 44 or online, AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota, for life.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't
the truth. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
There has to be devastating military retaliation for the targeting of American troops in Jordan, a friendly nation, across international borders, leaving 3 dead Americans and more than 36 wounded. And some of those, Bill, are in grave, critical condition as well. This is not an anomaly for Iran. This is what they've been doing for 45 years, but they have amped it up under Joe Biden and before him, Barack Obama, because the Obama-Biden foreign policy has been one of appeasement and conciliation. We have to totally reverse that policy, starting with retaliatory strikes right now and continuing beyond that to ensure that we're no longer trying to bribe the Ayatollahs with billions of dollars. We're not looking the other way whenever they cheat on sanctions, and we're certainly not going to tolerate even the slightest provocation against our troops in the Middle East. Anything else will simply invite more attacks.
But, and that was Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. The one voice coming from the White House in unison is, we will respond. Now, of course, I do not expect them to give us specifics. I don't want specifics given, because I want it to be a surprise attack, and without warning even to those we're attacking. When we sent missiles into parts of Yemen to go after the Houthi rebels, we sent word to them early and saying, we're going to hit this target about this date, this time, get your people out of there. So they got their people out, and they moved a lot of their equipment. What kind of attack is that? It's simply a show, a dog and pony show for the American public, and wasting millions of dollars in munitions in the process. Senator Cotton is right that we've got to be very firm about it. No one wants the war to get bigger, but every time I hear this from the White House, and they state repeatedly, we don't want to enrage, we don't want to get over the top, we don't want to attack Iran. Every time that's said, I raised the question in the first hour, I'll do it again. Are they saying it for the value and the ears of the American people, or for our enemies, in Iran in particular? CNBC has a news military analyst from NBC that they often have on, Jack Jacobs. He's retired, a colonel. And he said, you're probably going to continue to encourage Iran's allies to attack the way they are because Iran sees a reluctance from the U.S. to hit Iran directly. That's correct. That's 101 strategy from the War School. The War School of West Point, Annapolis, whichever one you want to choose. Once you start telegraphing, well, we don't want to do that, well, then they're going to take advantage of it. You want to put in a more simpler phrase? The boxer is told repeatedly, you got to keep your left up, got to keep your left. You drop your left, he's going, haymaker you with the right, drop you to the floor. And you keep lowering it and lowering, saying, well, I don't really want to, and then suddenly you're down on the floor. We are getting more information on what happened with this attack the other day on our Outpost 22 in Jordan. I'll get to that in a moment, but first, let me set the stage for you. Again, glad to have you on board with us. This is January 30, 2024, the second of 2 hours of Larry Connors USA, back-to-back, Monday through Friday, right here for you. And, of course, when we're on the air, we're also streaming video at News Talk STL, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, even YouTube, or at Larry Connors USA, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter. And I don't care which one you choose to watch. Just glad to have you watch if you choose. And it's also a way to pull up either a podcast, video, and or audio if you miss anything by going to LarryConnersUSA.com. LarryConnersUSA.com. It'll be available for you. And Larry Connors USA Facebook. And when you watch or listen to something you missed, please push share. Send it on to someone else so they can get involved. And I thank you. Which, by the way, I've had some notice that, why do you salute when you begin the program? Some in the beginning said, that's kind of dorky a little bit. But they were very careful in how they said it, because you don't tell a Marine that it's dorky to salute. But let me give you a more understanding. I do it because I feel that I'm reporting to duty for you. You, I'm reporting to, and I'm letting you know when I'm here and ready to do the mission for you. And I often also thank Vic Porcelli on his show, he and Ken Williams, Kendra Thunderstealing Williams, often praising me for doing it as well. Some of you do praise it. Some are indifferent. Some could care less. Some think it's nerdy. I don't care. I'm going to continue doing it. There's an extra salute for you. All right, to the issue of this attack on our Tower 22, as it's called, an outpost base we have in Jordan. I want you to listen to this CBS report, and inside the report is a little bit of information, two pieces actually, that kind of say, what? How the hell did that happen?
A U.S. official says the one-way drone used in the attack was Iranian-made, the same kind Iran has provided to Russia to aid in its invasion of Ukraine and to the militias it supports.
Iran continues to arm and equip these groups to launch these attacks.
Pentagon officials tell CBS News the explosive drone came in low and slow several minutes after a U.S. drone was returning from a mission in Syria. The base's air defense system had been temporarily taken offline to allow the American drone to land safely. There was little to no warning for the troops still in their sleeping quarters.
So the radar that would have detected this drone coming in was turned off to allow a U.S. drone to return to the base. Do they not have pulses, signal indicators as to if it's an enemy or our own approaching? They should. I'm totally surprised by that remark. And I'm going to have to look into more details in how they are doing these things, because obviously if a fighter jet is coming in, you're going to assume it's going to be one of yours till it starts opening fire. You should have some identification factor. It's being tracked by radar. You know what it is. You know where it originated. Well, in this case, they didn't. And it happened catching a lot of our troops asleep at the time. 3 U.S. troops killed. Now, thank God there weren't more, but there certainly could have been. And these 3 were actually had been activated not too long ago, if I've been reading it correctly, that they were basically sent over as part of a backup force. It's not clear yet. It's kind of scattered. The information often is in the beginning. But just happened to be these 3. They weren't on an outpost fighting at that point. They were simply sleeping. All right, here's the latest I can find on this. These 3 that were killed were all from Georgia. A 46-year-old Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, Carrollton, Georgia. Specialist Kennedy Landon Sanders, 24, Waycross, Georgia. Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffitt, 23, of Savannah, Georgia. Now, I do not know that Brianna is male or female. I assume it is female. They died when that drone hit their housing unit. They were assigned to an engineer battalion in Fort Moore, Georgia. So they were activated and being sent to that area to sit on the outpost to just watch for any action that might happen. The mothers of one of them, I mean, it's heartbreaking. And it didn't happen. The mothers of one of them, Kennedy Sanders, posted, "I just can't believe I'll never be able to hug and kiss my baby again. Life is so unfair." I just want my baby. Well, there needs to be an investigation of why that radar system was shut down at that time, and that a slow-flying drone was able to penetrate and get that close. In the meantime, as I was stating at the beginning, on MSNBC, NBC News military analyst Colonel Jacobs, retired, said, he was asked specifically by the co-host, you got Senator Lindsey Graham saying we should attack immediately, Senator Tom Cotton really raising the stakes. Why do you think attacks will be more limited to return strikes? He said, well, the U.S. has been reluctant to conduct any attacks, and in doing any attacks, the counterstrikes has been limited to what the administration perceives to be proportional. And critics say, and properly so, that Iran's allies don't need any excuse to continue or widen their attacks. They're going to do it anyway. Iran is fairly well convinced, and probably properly, the U.S. is reluctant to attack Iran directly. And they say it every day, don't they? Which, by the way, Israeli special forces, dressed as civilians and medical staff, went into a hospital in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin, killing 3 Palestinian men, all terrorists. These were IDF special forces, dressed in disguise as nurses, women in hijabs and everything, and one pushing a wheelchair, one carrying a baby car seat, but they were all carrying assault weapons. And why they went into a hospital to do that? How shameful, you say? No, because that's where the terrorists were hiding, inside the hospital. And so to avoid hitting or hurting innocents, they went in as a special unit to take them out directly. Good. The vice presidential election this time around is going to be markedly more important than previously. Fox News' Stuart Varney sets the stage.
Joe Concha says, and I'm quoting now, the vice presidential picks matter more than ever before in this year's election. Concha is with me now. Joe, why is the Veep pick so important this year?
Well, this year, Stu, we have a situation where the consequential pick for Donald Trump is the fact that in 4 years, people see that person being the president, right? If Donald Trump wins and is successful, usually it's then, well, maybe we'll get that vice president in 8 years. So in this case, this is the person that will take the mantle from Donald Trump in an election year that will start basically in 2026. On the Democratic side, it's consequential in a different way, because you have a situation where 32% of Americans, this is according to a Washington Post poll, believe that Kamala Harris is ready to be president. I mean, that's a devastating number when considering most Americans, including a majority of Democrats, don't want Joe Biden running for a second term and being in the Oval Office until he's 86 years old. And perhaps, Stu, this is the reason why we keep hearing this theory that Michelle Obama will replace Joe Biden on the ticket at the convention in Chicago. I don't see that happening, but the chatter is only getting louder around that. So vice presidential picks usually don't decide elections, but they're going to have more of an impact this time around than most other elections.
I think Joe Concha makes a very valid point there. Trump can only serve 4 years. So the candidate for VP will be actually in the highest position to move forward as president following Trump, maybe an 8-year term. If Biden and Kamala go in together and something happens to Biden over that next 4 years, you know who's stepping into the vice president, or rather stepping into the Oval Office. And that's not good, not even in the minds of the Democrats. And then Joe Concha and Stuart Varney were talking about an interview with Governor Newsom, of course, still claiming that he's available if they're going, I'm going to be needed, I'm going to be here. And then he's trying to push forward how great the Bidenomics program has been working.
We have the best 3-year record of any modern American presidency, period, full stop.
Biden's approval is historically low. Why is that?
Everybody's approval. Across the spectrum, you find exceptions to that. The economy is booming, inflation is cooling, and of course the economic strategies this president's put together were all things Republicans dreamt of, but never delivered. He's delivered.
So, Joe, The best 3-year performance of any presidential in modern history. You want to take that to pieces?
Sure. Look, that wasn't much of a pushback, by the way, from Jonathan Karl. He has found the time to write 3 profoundly negative books about Donald Trump, but just can't seem to find time to write one about Joe Biden.
Let me stop it right there. He's right. Jonathan Karl has written 3 negative books about Trump. Let me see. The very first one, 2020, Front Row at the Trump Show. Negative all the way about Trump. 2021, Betrayal, the final act of the Trump Show. And 2 years later, 2023, Tired of Winning, Donald Trump and the End of the Grand Old Party. All of them negative about Trump and Trump supporters. But he does not have the gonads to push back against Governor Newsom and say, no, wait a minute. There's no way you can make the claim you're making. All right, let's continue this discussion between Stuart Varney and Joe Concha.
Inflation is still 250% higher than it was when Biden took office. Violent crime is still driving Americans out of American cities like Gavin Newsom's San Francisco and Los Angeles to places like Nashville and Florida and Texas. The border is the #1 issue because even Democrats see what a national security threat it is to have hundreds of terrorists on the FBI terror watch list crossing into this country. Jonathan Karl didn't talk about that very much. And we see a patently weak president, at least he's seen as patently weak, by our adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran, that's using our U.S. servicemen and women as target practice in the Red Sea as we speak. So Jonathan Karl should have had Newsom answer those facts one by one, but instead offered up a weak question around polling to allow him to spin, and that is something that Gavin Newsom is very good at. Yep. So 3 years, great record. Then why, again, is Joe Biden at 33% approval, according to an ABC News poll? That is the lowest we've seen since Jimmy Carter and then some.
And that's ABC News, Jonathan Karl's own network. And he didn't bring that poll up. No, he gave Gavin Newsom plenty of cover and gave him a softball question. And Concha's right. I mean, you offer him a spin question. Listen, Newsom, like many of the leftists, they have that spin down. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. Throw it in the dryer, around and around it goes, and what comes out, maybe it'll be dry. If not, we just keep throwing it back in there until we get what we want. That was a clear example of how the leftist media will phrase and rephrase things to make things look so very, very bad for anyone with common sense. There are many Democrats that see through that facade as well. But you got the others. They're deep inside the laundry cycle, and they just can't see beyond the door, even though it's glass. And they continue to spin around lost. Larry, I wish you had a good example to give us. Oh, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked because, ta-da, I have one. I have a perfect one. Rachel, Madwoman Maddow, and how she wants to make it clear to everyone if Trump gets back in, he's going to be a dictator. And she sings the praises of the woman who just won $80 million from Trump.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Question, do you know what vermiculite is? It is an insulation in the attics of hundreds of thousands of homes and public buildings. Looks like kitty litter, but often contains asbestos. Wellington Environmental is the largest company in the Midwest that can remove that hazard for you. Wellington has what is called the General, a powerful industrial vacuum that can suck vermiculite out of the attic. Hang on, there's something else you should know. Many of you might qualify for up to a $4,000 rebate. You should at least contact Wellington to see if you qualify. And here's something else. Wellington arrives at the time they give you, not sometime within 4 hours. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental. Your world. Cleaner, better, safer. Be well with Wellington.
Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis.
Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
No, you guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for us covering the local angle.
People, this is America.
We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1
and newstalkstl.com.
As a truck driver, I've learned how important road safety is. I know that large trucks need more time and room to stop. That's why I always hang back and follow other vehicles at a safe distance. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, try to remember to always give trucks extra space when you merge in front of them. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Ackerman Toyota had a great 2023, so Jay asked me to thank you for all of your support. Loyal customers making Ackerman Toyota number one in St. Louis Toyota sales. Number one out of the 75 Toyota dealers in the region in Camry and Corolla sales. Ackerman has the lowest prices, great selection. Visit Ackerman at Hampton and 44 or online, AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota, for life.
This is News Talk STL.
See, the ways of this world will just bring you to tears. Keep the Lord in your heart and you'll have nothing to fear. Live the best that you can and don't lie and don't steal. Keep your nose on the grindstone and out of the pills. Well, Daddy, I've been trying, I just can't catch a break. There's too much in this world I can't seem to shake.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
What is appealing about a dictator? What is a dictatorship, right? What is appealing about a strongman leader replacing democracy? Having somebody who just stays in power indefinitely and has unchecked total authority to do whatever he wants. What is appealing about that? Not just why would you offer to be that? You can see the appeal to a person who wants to be that kind of person. But why would you want that in your country? The most appealing thing about a strongman leader, right, is that he'd be able to get stuff done. He'd be unconstrained. Couldn't be stopped, you know? I alone can fix it. Through enforcing, loyalty to him or death, by locking up his enemies, by breaking all the rules, government schmoverment, Congress schmungress, the courts, yeah, right, them and what army? That's what he is promising. That's the appeal.
That is the appeal, according to Rachel Maddow, talking about Trump being a dictator. And you know what she's building that off of? The Sean Hannity interview, in part, where Sean was saying, you said that if you get back in office, one of the first things you want to do is be a dictator. And Trump says, I do. I want to be a dictator for one day. And he's declared that at various speeches. I want to be a dictator for one day. You know what he's talking about? Signing executive orders as a president he can do, as Biden did. As Biden did on his first day, shut down the Keystone Pipeline, basically open the border, rip up things that we got out of, like Paris Accord Treaty, things like this, whatever he wanted to do. He did not need congressional approval, but he was not being a dictator. He was using executive privilege, which is what Trump would be doing. There's the point. They want to look at this and say, if Biden's doing it, then it's not really a dictator. It's simply carrying out duties of his office. And what's the difference? You know what the difference is. One is being Trump, and two, being Joe Biden. And when Rachel Maddow goes through the list of all the things that she wants to point out of what, quote, a dictator might do, I want you to listen again. And as she's talking, you tell me, is she talking about Trump or is she talking about Joe Biden?
He'd be unconstrained. couldn't be stopped, I alone can fix it. Through enforcing, loyalty to him or death, by locking up his enemies, by breaking all the rules, government schmoverment, Congress schmungress. The courts, yeah, right. Them and what army? That's what he is promising. That's the appeal.
That's the appeal? In other words, ignoring the courts, I'm not responsible, I don't have to be held accountable? Now, she's in the process of setting up an interview, which I'm going to run some clips for in a moment, with E. Jean Carroll, the woman who claims that in the mid-'90s, she thinks maybe mid-'90s, might have been earlier '90s, might have been late '90s, that Trump sexually assaulted her in a Manhattan department store. There's no video of it. It's just her word against his, and she did not make the real claim until years later, the 20s. It happens in the 90s. She doesn't claim until the mid 20s. Actually, really went after it in 22. Why in 2022? Well, because in 2022, New York passed a law giving adult sexual assault victims a one-time opportunity to file civil cases, even if the statute of limitations had long expired. Now, she had previously accused Trump of rape. He denied it, so she had sued him for slander for denying that he had raped her. There are cases of rape where there's often little, if any, evidence, even if the woman is absolutely truthful. And you don't want to simply dismiss a woman because other women have used it as a scheme. But I would tell you this, anytime a woman fakes a rape, falsely accuses someone, she diminishes women who are true victims. True victims. It is as bad, if not worse, depending on the situation, as stolen valor. Someone claiming to be a highly decorated soldier and numerous purple badges and merits of honor and everything, and they never served a day in their life. In fact, they're stealing the honor of those who have served and paid a price, like our 3 troops just the other day in Jordan. And if no one is above the law, you know the name Eric Schwerin? This is a Biden family's estranged money man who shared bank accounts with Joe Biden. He's going to appear next week on a House impeachment inquiry deposition. I think it's set for next week. They want to ascertain information about what role he had in the business family dealings with Biden and Joe Biden's knowledge and participation of those dealings. Schwerin, according to the White House logs, visited the White House at least 27 times during Joe Biden's vice presidency, when he was vice president. In 2018, one of the Hunter laptop texts revealed a deep distrust of Schwerin being involved in the family affairs. Apparently, Hunter owed Schwerin money, according to some of the texts, and he claimed that Schwerin was, quote, his worst enemy, and everybody knows it. And he whined that I owe him 30% of my income for 10 years. Apparently, that's, again, because of Schwerin's involvement in the Biden business dealings. So, Rachel Maddow, if you want full clarity and everyone's above the law, then obviously, why aren't we looking at Joe Biden in more detail? And to that extent, the claims by Tara Reid, remember, she was the young woman who said when he was a senator that he had summoned her, and when he got to where they were meeting, he started kissing me, his hands on me, under my clothes, down my skirt, up inside, penetrating me with my fingers. No one really investigated that. There was no camera video, no DNA apparently taken, and at the same time, it was her word against his. But that was Joe Biden when he was a senator. So Maddow, and talking about how Trump might be a dictator and just throw everything out, she's setting up E. Jean Carroll, the woman who just won $80+ million in the defamation suit to begin with, but mainly this civil suit of basic rape by Trump, because she's using that statute that created a window for her to crawl through and file her suit.
A would-be strongman says he is immune from the legal system. He is unconstrained by any institution and by anything in our government. E. Jean Carroll is the one who called that question. E. Jean Carroll's civil case says, I'm not a strongman, and neither are you. None of us are. No one can be in America, because this is a democracy, and the law, in a case like this, she says, the law protects me, even from you. And so I will call the question. I will call on the law, the court system, to show that, to prove that the strongman model does not work here, however much people might want it. This is not Europe between the wars. This is America.
This is America. Well, then she posed a question to E. Jean Carroll.
Jean, let me just ask you, you guys have lived this case in one way or another since 2019, when Trump was still in the White House, and you published your book. How different is it now to be part of this case now that you are out the other side? You have won this massive $83 million judgment. Do you, does it feel different to you now than it did while you were in the middle of it?
Rachel, thank you for that incredible introduction. The three of us were shaking with laughter and tears in our eyes, laughing and crying all at the same time. You happened to put in a nutshell what we were fighting for. You did it. Thank you so much, Rachel. Yes, I feel that this bodes well for the future. I think we've planted our flag. I think we've made a statement that things are going to be different, that there's going to be a new way of doing things in this country.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. I know her life's going to be different with $80 million, assuming she gets to keep all of it after the appeals. And she's talking about those with her. She's talking about her attorneys on either side. And praising Rachel Maddow. Thank you for making our case so clear. Wonder what Rachel Maddow would say about Tara Reid and the complaint that she was never really got a chance to confront Joe Biden. Well, then Rachel also moved to another issue. So you're going to have $80 million. What are you going to do with it?
You've talked about using some of Trump's money that you're about to get to help shore up women's rights. Do you know what that might be, what that might look like?
Yes, Rachel. Yes.
Tell me.
I had such great ideas for all the good I'm going to do with this money. First thing, Rachel, you and I are going to go shopping. We're going to get completely new wardrobes, new shoes, motorcycle for Crowley, new fishing rod for Robbie. Rachel, what do you want? Penthouse? It's yours, nothing. Rachel. Penthouse and France? You want France? You want to go fishing in France? No? Oh, all right, okay.
That's a joke.
Although if me fishing in France could do something for women's rights, I would take the hit. You know, I would obviously.
Well, I'm going to give Rachel Maddow, Madwoman Maddow, credit for bringing it back to using the money for women's rights, because in the beginning it's just, we're going to be a big spending spree. Well, obviously the appeal team, or rather the Trump team, is appealing the verdict. Coming up, a decision to maybe get really tough on sanctuary cities and states, or at least cities and counties inside the state of Texas. Stand by, please.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at LarryConnersUSA.
I'm always glad to have new sponsors, but I have turned some down. See, I only endorse clients if I believe in them. And I've been a spokesman for John Beal for 10 years. Through those years, listeners said they went with John Beal because they trusted me. And just recently, a woman named Mary wrote, "We got a John Beal roof based on your recommendation." Thank you, Mary, and all the others for calling John Beal. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF.
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811, brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
Sometimes you want to do something extra special for someone. Vincent's Jewelers can help you. Maybe you want to do something for yourself. Mark a date, something you accomplished. It doesn't have to be anything really expensive, but it has to mean something now and for the future. Vincent's, locally owned, just ask for the chance to work with you, as they have with me, on Olive, just east of 270. Every day, new specials at vincentsjewelers.com or Vincent's Facebook.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, please visit usdeputy.org.
One of the 5 most traumatic experiences in life is moving. I can assure you that McGuire Moving can help ease that pressure. Moving into a new home or a new business, locally, internationally. McGuire is rated number 1. More than 80 years of experience. Free estimate? Call McGuire, 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuireMoving.com.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
House Republicans unveil articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. GOP leaders saying, quote, his refusal to obey the law is not only an offense against the separation of powers in the Constitution of the U.S., it also threatens our national security. Texas Congressman Pat Fallon filed the original articles of impeachment against Mayorkas a year ago and joins us now as the GOP closes in on making it happen. So, Congressman, for people who say he just is terrible at his job, but it's not impeachable, what do you say?
Well, I say that when you lie under oath to Congress, Brian, that is impeachable, and that's what Alejandro Mayorkas has done. And not only that, but he's violated the Immigration and Nationality Act 7-8 times over. And these articles spell that out in specificity.
Well, yeah, it does as far as the articles of impeachment. Now, yesterday, you were listening because we had Jonathan Turley stating to you, again, he's a George Washington law professor, that you can't simply impeach Mayorkas simply because he's doing a bad job or if you don't like him. Yeah, I understand that, and I agreed with Turley, but I don't know that he had actually seen the true impeachment articles. Today, in the first hour, in case you missed it, Hans von Spakovsky was with us. And he's a good friend of Turley. He said he didn't want to question him, but when I raised what Turley said, he said, well, yeah, you can go after if he's lied to Congress and they got him on perjury and things of this nature, which are part of the impeachment articles they have in front of them right now. This means that, yes, the impeachment of Mayorkas is valid, and it is moving forward. But have to keep in mind 2 things. The House will impeach, possibly, but it would take the Senate to convict. And with the makeup of the Senate now, controlled by Democrats, or at least 50-50 with the deciding vote in the hands of the vice president, not going to happen. There are numerous articles I've got here in front of me, seeing if anything's changed on some of the impeachment provisions is what they're considering. But right now, most of them are just strictly sticking to the point that We're moving forward. We see nothing that will hold us back at this point. I do have one piece here I should share with you, and this is from The Hill, saying that the Mayorkas impeachment articles are now under a microscope, and it's not just going to be criticism if he's doing a good job or not, that they're being marked up to show that he failed to follow immigration laws, pointing to detention standards that have never been met under any administration, including the Trump era. That's going to make it a very difficult situation. The author of this article, Rebecca Bateston, adds that they also accuse Mayorkas of breach of public trust, something they say, talking about the Republicans, amounts to a violation of his oath to well and faithfully discharge duties of his office. Republicans claim the case rises to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. Democrats are pushing back. I don't know if it'll get through the House or not, and it's a razor-thin margin anyway on top of that. But Texas Congressman Fallon had originally filed these charges, and when he did so, obviously he thought it would move a lot quicker. Well, that was almost a year plus ago. Well, let me take it back, and that wasn't that long ago that he started. They talked about it about a year ago, but then filed it right before the end of last year. And the Texas congressman says, we do have specifics, as you were hearing in that Fox News report. Here's his example.
Let me read you an exact quote. Mayorkas said under oath to Congress that the border was no less secure than it was previously. Now, if that's true, well, let's look at the numbers. In the last two administrations, Obama and Trump, at this point in their presidencies, 3 years deep, they had about 1.6 million illegal encounters. Joe Biden has 8.5 million. That's not just about like it was before. We'd never had a month that we had over 200,000 illegal border crossings. We had 20 under Joe Biden.
20 just under Joe Biden. 20 months exceeding previous numbers. I want to share a piece from you from the Federalist by John Daniel Davidson, senior editor. And he points out that immigration and border policy should first serve the interest of Americans to the exclusion of all other peoples and nations. Let's stop right there. We all acknowledge this country is built on immigrants. That's a true melting pot. They've come from all over the world to be part of the freedom, liberties, independence you have in America. Many of them in the beginning, of course, came through Ellis Island. And now we still bring in migrants who are filing for either asylum or have properly waited their turn, or they win a lottery number that gives them a chance to go the head of the line. But they're competing now against all the illegals coming across. John Daniel Davidson is talking about a clip that's going around showing Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar talking to a group of Somalians about her allegiances and priorities as a U.S. Congresswoman. Let me stress that. She is a U.S. Congresswoman. And he said what Omar says is instructive, not just about her general worldview, but mostly and more importantly, about how backward and destructive our immigration system is. Omar, over the weekend, in this speech, was pure blood and soil nationalism for Somalia, not America. This is a U.S. Congresswoman. She tells them, I'm a Somalian first, a Muslim second. She doesn't even mention the U.S. or her U.S. citizenship. Just gone. Now, if this was any citizen in the street making it, so be it. But this is a sitting member of Congress. And she, in talking to those surrounding her that were all about Somalia, she promises to use her power and influence in Congress to protect her nation's interest. And again, that nation to her is Somalia, not America. Then apparently speaking in the native language in Somalia, she tells the cheering crowd that her top priority is to expand Somalia's territory. That's her top priority, a U.S. Congresswoman, to expand the territory of Somalia. As Somalians, one day we will go after our missing territories. This is referring to regions in Kenya and Ethiopia. And she then brags the U.S. government, quote, will only do what Somalians in the U.S. tell them to do. They will do what we want, nothing else. They must follow our orders. That is how we will safeguard the interests of Somalia. We Somalians must have the confidence in ourselves that we call the shots in the U.S. And Jonathan Daniel Davidson says, in light of her statements, it's fair to ask, why is she even allowed to serve in Congress? Why is she allowed to remain in the U.S.? She is an immigrant and a U.S. citizen, but clearly not an American. No allegiances to this country that took her in, sheltered her, protected her, provided her a safe haven from the chaos and violence of her homeland, and now, by the stupidity of the voters, she's a member of Congress. Excellent points made by Jonathan Daniel Davidson. Well, in Texas, the Texas Governor Abbott says, I've got a new way to deal with these in my state that want to declare sanctuary.
The first and foremost goal of government is to keep our people safe. What this sheriff has done is to release back out on the streets people who endanger our fellow Texans. As governor, I will not allow that to happen. Stuart, already I have defunded the Travis County government to the tune of $1.5 million in grant money from the governor's office. But now Texas is working on legislation that has already passed out of the Senate. I think will pass out of the House. And in just a few weeks, I will sign legislation that will impose stiff penalties on counties as well as on county officials like this sheriff, including the potential for jail time, including fines, including the possibility that these counties can be sued for civil damages for their dereliction of duty.
That is Governor Abbott talking to Stuart Varney about how in Texas they are going to go ahead and move forward, that if any city or county in the state wants to declare itself a sanctuary, they're going to face the wrath of the state of government from Texas as long as Abbott and Republicans control it. Travis County is where the state court is of Texas. Austin, Texas. The seat of government for state of Texas is in Austin. But it has become more and more blue. Couple of reasons. One, you've had University of Texas over the years trying to get a more elite status because hook 'em horns, and believe me, I started to go to UT at one point, decades ago, just didn't seem to have the appeal of the Poison Ivy League schools, so they were recruiting professors from those schools to come to Texas and teach, and they brought their baggage with them, and it keeps coming. And the baggage, when they open it up, has all now of the woke ideology that exists. Decades ago, it wasn't quite that bad. It was a lot of leftist ideas, some bordering Marxist, some communist, but not like it is today. And the University of Texas is a big part of Austin. And then the other thing is that they have decided to defund their police. Although they're reconsidering that. And they have numerous homeless on the streets of Austin. Beautiful city at one time. I have not been down there for a while. Guy asked me the other day, you want to go down? I said, where will we go? I don't know if I want to go back and see all the nonsense. He said, oh, we'll just go right straight to a poker room I know down there. I said, oh, well, I might do that. They are destroying it from inside out. It's a cancer inside Texas. It also exists in San Antonio and in El Paso. That's why you had Betos, whatever his name was, running against Ted Cruz and trying to win Senate seat and then the governorship. Cruz is up for re-election. And apparently it's going to be a pretty tough election this time around for him because so many are going blue. And then you've got those leaving California and New York. They want to go somewhere better, Florida, Texas, but then they want to bring their baggage with them. I thought you wanted to escape what you were living under. And Abbott is convinced this proposal to start punishing with fines and or removing funds and jail time will work.
The financial penalties will be so stiff, there's no way the counties could bear the burden of that cost. But secondly, because of the potential for jail time for the sheriff, ironically, going to the very jail that she is releasing people from, because of that, we will have the removal of the sheriff who is in noncompliance with ICE detainer requests.
And when will all of these measures be in place?
This should be a few weeks from now. Our legislative session ends at the end of May. I should be signing that law before the end of May. The effective date of this will be September 1. That's just the way the legislative calendar works. But this law will go into effect September 1 that will banish sanctuary cities. However, Stuart, in the meantime, I as governor and law enforcement officers in the state of Texas will be doing everything we can to make sure these dangerous criminals are not released back out onto the streets.
And this is exactly what they've been doing across the nation previously in California and the sanctuary cities being declared inside California. Not all of them have. Some say we're clearly not a sanctuary city. You get around Orange County, California, normally you're not going to find it. Then you get other states, Illinois, New York State, and then, of course, you got the cities of New York City and Chicago and D.C., and when he says dereliction of duty, this Travis County sheriff has released 142 criminal illegals defying orders for the Fed officials. Hold them until we get there. Federal immigration knows they got them. Hold them, we'll be there, we'll pick them up. And they let them go. They let them go. Now, all of this is serious. And if you missed the first hour and our discussion about razor wire along the border and if it can be kept in place, you missed a good hour. You need to go back and hear it. But bottom line from Hans von Spakovsky, the Supreme Court has not ruled that Texas has to take down the razor wire. And in fact, they have moved it, as I suggested the other day, maybe onto public and or private lands. Not anything to do with the federal government. We can fence in what we want in our state and keep out people or keep people in. But then the question, as raised by Stuart Varney, about what's with Austin?
The way we look at it is Austin is a blueberry in a sea of strawberries in the state of Texas.
Okay, let's get serious for a second. Go ahead.
It is a California-style liberal bastion where there's constant tension between the conservative governance of the state of Texas versus the liberal governance of the city of Austin and Travis County.
Yeah, and that's the reason it exists. A blueberry in a sea of strawberries. Good and accurate. As always, I thank you for listening. Rob Carter will be coming up next. I encourage you to be back with us tomorrow. And, of course, if you miss anything, go to LarryConnersUSA.com and pull it up and listen at your pleasure. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.